Okay, so I clicked it now. Well, your first time you counted, you're like, 1, 2, 3. I was like, oh, I wasn't ready.
Yeah, you're right. I got it intro.
I was like, am I hitting it the right time?
I got distracted thinking, where's my cursor?
I was trying to find it. I was like,
where did I go?
It was just like the longest pause ever. 1. You're just like waiting. 2, 3. I was like,
yeah, then I came up on that 3 line.
I panic clicked. You're like, no,
that was my snap.
Yes.
I don't even think you can hear it.
It's sad is that probably my phone's louder than me snapping right into the microphone. So.
You know what's I have like little fleshy nub fingers, so I don't know if that interferes with my snapping abilities.
I don't think so. I think that would be like a benefit though, because you have like more pressure. I don't know. I got those like weird like.
Look,
Jack
I'm trying my
Skellington
damnedest. Nothing. I'm looking at it registering on Audacity, and it's like these like little tiny blip lines. I'm like crying. I'm like, what the heck?
I feel like we're into poetry.
Welcome to This Is a Terrible Idea podcast.
Brought to you by Cereal Boxes. So first and foremost, we're going to apologize again if you do hear our phones vibrating. I don't have the ringer on, but I still don't understand how to do the settings. So, sorry.
Yeah.
I still like your fire background.
Oh, yeah. So I got a new wax warmer. And from the camera view, it just looks like there's like a small fire burning behind me.
The glare is so right. I thought there was a fire, and she was so calm about it, so I just kind of let it happen.
I was like, yeah, it's fine.
She's good.
I literally like that comic, like that dog meme where he's just sitting in a room on fire. It's fine.
It's fine.
This is fine. He's like drinking a cup of coffee. Maybe I am that meme.
Oh, you could be. We should
Maybe
get you that
just
shirt
me.
with that on it.
That'd be great. I already have the confused cat meme.
Meow.
Which I get so many compliments on when I go out in public wearing that damn shirt. Where'd you get it? Amazon.
The internet. Welcome to us today. Because that was such a great intro. Okay, so this is like women and like sanitariums, but I also put and asylums because when you Google it, it intertwines all the information, at least for me, but I'm really bad at Googling.
No, I agree. It kind of does overlap. But also, that was a great introduction because there's no soft way to like come into. We're going to talk about how bad sanitariums and asylums were to women.
Woo!
Yay! Super fun times.
We'll go into other aspects, but today we're gonna like kind of dabble into that.
We're gonna focus on the ladies.
Ladies, all the single ladies,
All the single ladies.
Put your hands up. Up
You couldn't be a single lady back then, though.
That's true.
Because as we found out in our research,
that's how you end up there.
And literally every problem was just centered around your vagina. There's no other reason.
You know, and it's sad because I'll post it in the video, but you're gonna see a picture of a list of like reasons like you could end up in one in like the like mid to 1800s, and these go for men and like women. I kind of wrote down both. I know you came up with some as well. But before I go into that, I guess I should tell you guys the difference between a sanitarium and an asylum. Because
hold on for a second there, I thought we were a legit podcast. You're like, before we start, I'm going to talk about our sponsor. I was like, whoa, wait, what?
Sponsored to you by my sad bank account. No.
Brought to you by this box of tissues.
It's empty, just like me, but don't worry, it's still here for moral support.
Oh crap.
Okay, so Sanitarium is an establishment for the medical treatment of people who are recovering or have chronic illness. So basically, like a hospital, just a normal hospital.
Yeah, you think like tuberculosis. That's a big one that got thrown in there.
Yeah, and we'll kind of go into that because it does have a great deal of how a lot of those came around was because of tuberculosis. Okay, so...
Shout out to TB!
Whoop, whoop! So, Asylum is an institution offering shelter and support to people who are mentally ill. So, but at some point, because of modern day Google, they kind of just intertwined both, because some places served as both, some places were actually two separate things.
Could you imagine? Let's just... we'll put all the crazy people with the sick people. They're the same, right?
We can't tell the difference, you know.
They're fine.
He's screaming into pillows. She's dying of TB. It's fine. They're all the same.
They put you in the same room. By the way, there's going to be a lot of jokes and laughing because that's how we cope with things on this dang show.
We're not normal.
Again, sad people died. Very sad people died. Okay? We're not laughing at them.
Yeah, like I feel bad for these people, and I feel bad for what some of these people had to go through. I'm not, like, condoning it, but from a future standpoint, you do kind of see some of the humor and the stupidity people had back
Hindsight is 20/20. That's all we're saying.
Mind blown. So I guess I'll go into some of my reasons of why you would end up there, and then I'm going to let you go off with some of yours because I know you have some.
Yeah, I'll supplement yours. Yeah.
So, again, this is like mid to late 1800s, so this is not like modern day. But the first one that really hit me, and it sounded so sad, was a reason you could go in was masturbation for 30 years.
Wait, there's sentences?
No. My thought was it's sad, but it said masturbation for 30 years on the list. So if you've been masturbating for 30 years, so
I thought they were like sentencing you. Like,
no.
You masturbated, you're in there for 30 years.
That's really odd. I mean, sponsored by Pornhub.
Great.
No, that was one of the reasons. It said masturbation for 30 years. So if you've been masturbating for 30 years, you could end up there. One, how would they know? Two, like, do they knock on your door one day and be like, no, I'm clean? I mean, I don't know.
But also, like, why so specifically 30 years? Like,
see, that's what I was thinking.
Is there, like, a normal time period to masturbate? Because let's be honest, 30 years, for 18 of those, you were a prepubescent child. I would imagine. So it's not like you've been masturbating a straight 30 years.
Well, see, that's what my first thought went to, but I was like, oh, that had to be tiring.
I can't deal with that. That's like really funny, actually.
The next one was menstrual deranged. Think about that.
Yeah, I do know this one because, like, what, you being on your period, how you're crazy. We're just crazy because we're on our period. I
don't know. We're just spewing out blood, dropping eggs, so shit. Taking on the world. You get a little deranged. I get it.
So PMS could get you institutionalized, huh?
Yes. Thank you, Tampax. The next one was overstudy of religion. So if you're a Bible
I like
thumper,
how we go from masturbation to periods to, you want to know a little too much about Jesus.
You gotta have to come to Jesus moment. And that was it.
Not at the same time, though.
Yeah, don't be on your period masturbating for 30 years thinking about God. Please don't do that.
You'd be a triple threat.
Do you get your own room at that point? I'm just curious.
If you don't, that's a damn shame.
Well, and of course, you and I were talking about this earlier. Female disease. That's it.
That's very general.
What disease do I carry that, swear to God, you're going to put me in there?
Well, do you want me to tell you what the feminine diseases were?
Yes. Can you, I couldn't figure out what ones they were referring to, so please.
Well, I'm going to bring one to the table for you because it's the best one. Like, if I had to do, like, a ranking system, this was the best one. Uterine fury. I kid you, that is an actual term. Uterine fury. Okay, so they literally thought women could go crazy if they stayed virgins too long. I shit you not. This was an actual medical term. It was an actual diagnosis. So yeah, these men, you know, because I don't imagine a female came up with this. Go, oh, you know what? She just hasn't been dicked down. That's why she's upset.
I mean, there's just so instead of putting him in there, why don't you put him in, like, to a world of prostitution? I don't know. Like,
because that doesn't help.
Oh, yeah.
No, you gotta give them a pelvic massage because that is a medical procedure. And I like how, okay, so this kind of bleeds into the thing of, like, the pelvic massage. Basically, he was just finger blasting your way to mental health, okay? That's all I'm saying. But also...
Oh my God.
You want to know why vibrators were invented?
Why?
Because the men who perform these pelvic massages, these doctors, their wrists started hurting. They felt overworked. And it took sometimes way too long to get a woman to owe her way to mental health.
Did they never think, like, it could be their technique?
Yeah, like, some of us take a while, you know, I'm just saying. Like, you know.
Gentle.
Yeah, like, okay, like, sorry we can't be done in 5 minutes, Gerald. I mean, calm down.
Had a wham bam, thank you ma'am. I mean, God.
So they've invented vibrators to speed up the process, and so it wouldn't be so hard on the men who had to perform these pelvic massages.
And that's how Pornhub was born.
But that's where the history of vibrators comes from, though. It comes from being used as a medical instrument to blast a woman into mental health recovery. Because they thought that literally every problem that we had was somehow related to our vaginas, our uteruses, our not being banged or being banged too much, because there was nymphomania. You could be thrown in there for nymphomania, which is like, we know it now as like sex addiction, I guess would be the closest thing to it.
Yeah, like
or just a girl who just liked having sex. Like their husbands would be looking at them going like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. You know.
You can't win either way. If you didn't have sex with your husband, they thought that was bad and they would throw you in there.
If you had too much.
You liked it way too much. He was like, oh, there's something wrong with this one.
So another one was just kind of random. You fell from a horse in war. You just fell off your horse. That's it.
It's traumatizing.
I've fallen off a horse
I mean,
before.
I would be traumatized.
I mean...
Oh my gosh, you would have been thrown in? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I would have probably gone, yeah, for that one, but definitely. This next one, though, I kind of find it humorous in its own way, but it's seduction and disappointment.
What?
Yes, so seduction and disappointment. So basically...
On whose end, though?
Well, and that was my question. Like, is it both parties, or is it like one over the other? Like I don't know.
Did she seduce and then get disappointed?
I guess like it was. I think it was supposed to be more of a point from a woman. So like, if she seduced him and it was just bad, they just threw you in there.
And this isn't even to negate like the other stuff that happened, right? Like, there are probably people with actual mental illnesses, because women could get thrown into these places for mood swings. Which, by the way, I want to know what their definition of a mood swing is. It's just because like she looked up one day and was like, you know what? Go fuck yourself, Frank. Like
it's like, I don't know, it's just like a number of things. And like another one was,
think about it, like back then, like women had a lot of pressures on them, like societally. Like we weren't allowed to enjoy sex, we weren't allowed to think about sex, but we were meant to produce children. Then we had to run households, but not too much, because your husband, he runs the household. You're just there to assist.
Yeah, it's like another one was superstition. That was it.
Oh.
Like, I was
then I'm in.
I think most of America.
If I wasn't in for the masturbating for 30 years part, which I'm 26, so you tell me how that math works.
You were doing it before you were thought of. Now, this one I thought was kind of sad, like, because naturally you got screwed in the end on this one, because your parents were cousins.
How is it your fault?
I don't know. Like, you could still be perfectly normal, but your parents were cousins, so you're going in.
Like, I feel like the parents should have been the ones in.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, parents were cousins. I'm like, why do you have to suffer?
Dang, like, man, your parents being cousins and screwing was somehow your fault.
This one would have definitely got you tossed in asthma.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I'm down for the count. I'm out. Done.
Now, this one got me because I feel like this could be all through time. Politics and political excitement. So if you were pumped up because Abe Lincoln was coming to town, you're going in.
Wow. You couldn't even be a fan of Abe.
Yeah. And then, last but not least, laziness. So if you didn't feel like washing the dishes that day, you're going.
Again, yeah, define laziness. Is it because I didn't want to pick up your shit for the 30th time today, Alexander? Like...
And I'm gonna post the list because there's so many, and I think there was like at least like 6 of them that had to do with like sex and masturbation alone.
I mean, not even to mention like hysteria, how that was like a big thing.
Yep.
Oh, you're just hysterical. But by the way, there's no concrete definition of hysteria.
There isn't, honestly.
If you're just crying, like if you're just having a day, that's hysteria.
It really is. I mean, you can't... Yeah.
If you're laughing too much, it's hysteria.
I think a lot of these, and doctors, I shall say, because I'm assuming mostly male, because back then, women were not so much in those professions.
Let's just say, too, it did not take much to be a doctor back then.
No, well, okay, so you figure, like, even, like, the eras of, like, like, Beethoven and stuff like that, they went to school, and they were graduating high school at, like, age 13, and then they were graduating college at, like, age 17, and then all of a sudden they were, like, doctors and musicians, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Don't you love, like, when you're reading some of these people's biographies, like, and then by the age of 11, he was studying medicine, and you're like, what the fuck?
By 16, he was the top doctor in the nation. You're like,
and
what?
You're like, okay, wait, no. Gosh dang it. You want to know why we're at the way we are at this point? We had children running our freaking world at one point.
But in a sense, I mean, but nowadays they're like, you want to be a doctor, 10 years of your life. We're like, damn, I just got out when I was 18. I don't know. Yeah.
Too bad I didn't live in 1732 when I could have just been done with this by the time I could smoke cigarettes in the U.S. Could have had a full-fledged career by now. Woo! and a wife that I would have thrown into an asylum because she looked at me funny at the breakfast table.
I see the way you're staring at that orange. You're gone. My thing is, like, I don't know. It was crazy on all... There's so many ways of you can going up in there, or reasons they could have put you in there, whatever they want to put on paper. But I guess I'll go into a little bit. Like, they actually kind of segregated their patients, though. Some were private, and some were called pauper patients. So, private was...
Dang, you could be a poor patient.
You can. Well, the private ones were families who had money. You kind of had, like, your own room and everything. And you were well taken care of, like, your own individual, like, pudding cup and shit like that. And then the pauper patient, you were thrown into a room with, like, 30 beds, and there wasn't even enough beds for everybody. And then, like, they just, like, threw your shit, like, on a tray, like, lynch lady style. And
this lady's crazy, but, we'll put her in a room with 30 other crazy women and see what happens.
That makes sense. And it says basically they were like a charity case, and some were being funded by the state to just be in there. So if they picked you up, they stay in there. But there was less beds for the private patients because not everyone had that kind of money. There was very poor caretaking because obviously there was not enough staff for the amount of patients because, a lot of these places would have like hundreds of people and there would only be like 60 people on staff,
And that's a pretty common problem across the board with asylums, which we'll circle back because we plan to do more episodes of this, talking about specifically like places for disabled people, and this was a huge problem.
Yes, and I think I don't have it on here, but there's definitely a couple places in mind that used to be around, but they're no longer, that were probably some of the most notorious for how bad they were.
Geraldo showed us some shit.
Yes, I remember watching that.
Believe it or not, though, guys, like, more people other than Geraldo brought this to light. It's just one of them was a woman, so nobody was going to listen to her.
Exactly. Patients, like men and women, were even segregated, though, as well. So they're housed in, like, different wings, sometimes different hospitals.
Well, I don't imagine you want the crazy people, quote-unquote, to breed.
But here's my thing, though. It's like the lady who was thrown in there for not having any sex, put it in there with the guy. Bam. Solved. Could have got her out. Like, I found some about some of the routines. Like, they would wake him up at, like, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'd give him, like, breakfast with, like, tea or coffee or chocolate with porridge and bread. And then at 12:30 is when they fed him again, and that's pretty much it. They only got 2 meals, and they were considered, like, their main meal. And then after that, they were allowed, like, some tea with, like, a piece of cake or bread, and that was it. Like, they barely fed these people. Just enough to kind of give them something and then, like, shove them on their way.
As you do.
Of course. Says...
Crazy people don't eat.
I know.
We know that.
Look at me now. Says women would usually be kept indoors working in, like, laundry rooms or needle rooms, and sometimes would be required to clean around the different wards.
The needle room sounds great.
Would you give a crazy person a needle? I'm just saying.
And then we'll send them over to the scissors room.
Then the chainsaws.
It's fine.
For sure.
Nothing bad will happen.
People who
sometimes we give them knives to run around with.
Us. we would be them. So some patients couldn't work or whatever. They would allow 1 hour in the morning and the afternoon to go outside, have fresh air, but pretty much they would just throw them in the room with all the other crazies. I know you have some stuff as well. I don't know if you have more on, like, kind of what treatments they would do by chance.
Treatments, no, I didn't look really far into because they were like your general, well, other than the vibrator one, because that was a saga.
I know there's, like, I didn't look into it too much, but I know some with, like, electrotherapy and stuff. Well, probably when I can find more on that. I know it was a thing, though.
I mean, oddly enough, but, like, electroshock therapy was used across the board, like, and it was mostly used for, like, just subordination or as punishment. I mean, I'm convinced of that because there was absolutely no benefit to anybody to be electrocuted for 10 minutes and call it a day.
Yeah.
Most of the time, though, like, depending on your diagnosis, they could just sedate you, and they would sedate you for, like, days on end until you figured your shit out. Which, I guess that brings us into, like, lobotomies, because that was a very popular practice for whatever reason.
Lobotomies was just, it was a very fucked up thing, and they shouldn't have been ever approved of doing it, but because these people some were not absolutely sane enough that they were just test subjects, and that's what a lot of these asylums and stuff are used for. Doctors would go test these things because who was going to care?
Yeah, and the most common, I think lobotomy everybody knows of is the prefrontal cortex. Which, by the way, there's no scientific basis to say that any lobotomies would have ever worked. We know that destroying any part of your brain is kind of stupid, and even back then it was considered kind of a shady practice and like a weird procedure to do on people because of how it left people. And basically what they would do, they would put a literal ice pick behind your eye and just a little tap into your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, and that's it. They call it a day.
And it was not a very successful practice. People say the term botched lobotomies like as if a lobotomy ever went well. Like they never went well. Yeah, there's numerous stories, and even some people more well known in a sense who've had them and stuff, and nothing ever good came out of a lobotomy. And
one person was at Kennedy.
Yes.
That's like the most famous case that I know of. Rosemary Kennedy. So, the poor girl. We discussed this beforehand the podcast because we were just both so flabbergasted. But poor Rosemary Kennedy, she's in her early adult years. By the way, yes, related to JFK. It's one of his sisters. She had started experiencing seizures and mood swings when she was, a young adult. And by the time she was 22, her family described her as very volatile. And I was just thinking, like, maybe she wasn't, though. Maybe she was just tired of everybody's shit.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know, but he should have never had it done. I don't think that was right.
And the other thing is that her father is the one that gave the go-ahead for the lobotomy. Not her. She was 23 at the time she was lobotomized.
But see, I feel like she should have somehow walked away or ran away or something.
Or had to consent to getting a lobotomy.
Yeah, like, why didn't the doctor ask if she was okay with it, Because
from what I was reading, it's not like she had seen a psychiatrist or had even, like, consulted with a medical doctor herself to be diagnosed with anything, even like a mood disorder or whatever. This was just kind of decided for her that, we're just going to lobotomize her. It's fine.
Yeah, just like, fuck it, we think
she'll sort herself out.
And it obviously did her no good, though.
No, she was left, sadly, it palsied her arm. I don't remember which one. I think her left.
I think so.
And her left, I don't know. She had two options, right or left. So I don't remember. But it palsied one of her arms, and she never regained the ability to speak. So she was basically just like a vegetable for the rest of her life. And it's really sad. Because it's like, she had no say in this. I mean, and especially for something like violent mood swings. Like, I would love to know what the definition of violent mood swings. And I take anything the family says with a grain of salt. Because any family that would opt to be like, oh, you're just going to tap her brain out, that's fine.
Yeah, like, everyone knows your brain is one of the most crucial parts of your body, and it controls your nerve systems and whatever else. And so if you're just blindly tapping into someone's brain, because everyone sits differently, everyone's skull is shaped differently, everything, so you could be tapping into something completely different.
We don't even know what parts of our brain do.
Very little. I'm sure they have a great deal obviously now with modern science, but back then they definitely did not have a fucking clue.
Oh no!
To all that.
Yeah, and I remember discussing this because, granted, they're not brain science, they're not brain doctors, but still, I worked for ear, nose, and throat doctors, so ENT, otolaryngologists, and they, of course, know a lot about the structure of the head and the neck, and everything is very delicate, and they take everything that they do very delicately because of the reason that your head is like the most complex part of your body. So even like opening your jaw and stuff to do, you have to take into consideration all the nerves and what you could possibly be damaging with the brain. So I think have more of an awareness of it, but yeah, I don't know where in the hell that they thought, oh, you know what, we'll just tap it right out, it's fine.
Yeah, it's I would never, if I had
a little
child,
love tap.
Just a little love. If I had a kid, I would never allow it. I don't care how bad the
I
situation
would never
was.
consent to a lobotomy for anybody in my family.
And they were doing them like, they were handing it out like it was candy back then because they thought it was like the hottest fucking thing to do at that time. And it ruined so many kids and adults. And it's so sad.
And another reason why I kind of find the whole Rosemary Kennedy thing sus is because, so the family did all this based off of the rumors of these freaking nuns because she went to a private boarding school. And these nuns basically were like, oh, we think like she's sleeping around and she's going to get an STD. And the dad was concerned, which I cannot remember his name. Joseph?
I think Joseph.
Well, yeah, was his name Joseph Kennedy? Hold on, I'm going to Google that real quick. I don't want to be...
Hold on. Uno momento, por favor.
Yes. Not Joseph Patrick. I guess I'll go to Rosemary's thing again. John F. Kennedy's sister, who was lobotomized, but they don't put that on that shit. Yeah. Poor freaking Rosemary Kennedy, who got lobotomized. Yeah, Joseph Kennedy. I was right. I just want to make sure I don't want to go saying something stupid. But yeah, they so these nuns like spread rumors that, hey, she's sleeping around and she's like, you know, doing all this crazy shit. And Joseph Kennedy was so worried that she, like Rosemary, would ruin the family's reputation and hurt their chances for political office. Which I'm like, are you kidding me? You would lobotomize your daughter.
I mean,
because you think she makes you look bad?
See, that's really shitty. You did it because of your own personal gain. Like,
oh yeah, they just wanted her to shut up, pretty much.
Yeah. I found a couple of things. So, like, obviously, another thing is that they took certain steps to making sure, like, what they were doing to help these patients or to calm them down was such as, like, you know, they would obviously use restraints, God, I can't talk, padded cell walls, and then my favorite that I fucking hate and I think it's messed up is water therapy. They would, like, drown these people and whatever else. God. Oh, it's fucked up. They'll put them in, like, ice baths and, like, hold them down. They'll take, like, a cloth and cover their whole body and face and make them sit in these, like, ice baths for like 15-20 minutes, which is, it can be really dangerous because it shocks your body, but it puts you in like a certain nerve state.
You would think that doctors would understand what hypothermia is.
That's probably where they got waterboarding from, you know.
But the thing is like hypothermia, we've known about hypothermia for a while now, right? I'm not crazy.
Yeah. They said that technique was used on patients, but I know they use it on a lot of women, especially. They also used a drug at the time that was considered pretty cool and hip, was called paraldehyde, which is a sedative to calm the nerves, but they usually abuse that and they would OD people and that kind of stuff.
Oh, just to clarify, yes, we've known about hypothermia since the 1700s.
Bastards.
So we knew that this could happen. We knew that we can freeze people to death, by the way.
Yeah, and they would
just so we're all clear.
Because, you know, there's certain patients who, you know, were mentally ill, who can't be controlled or whatever. You know, I have some cousins and stuff who are mentally, you know, challenged and whatnot, and there's different levels. No one person is the same, but people like him, you know, if he got upset, he didn't know how to handle it. They would probably took him and like put him in these baths and stuff and do all these things and shove him in a padded cell room, and I think that's just shitty because, you know, he doesn't know. You know, he tries his best to understand, but, you know, I think that's so crappy, and I can't imagine what these people went through.
Not even to mention that, like, once again, we were saying that most of these places were so understaffed, they didn't know how to deal with difficult patients.
Yeah. Another one, which it is highly toxic, but they used mercury a lot back then.
Oh, mercury.
Yes. It was
our favorite medical instrument.
It was considered most effective for those who suffered from hysteria. which again, like I said, if you're unaware, mercury is highly toxic. I've actually dealt with mercury in chemistry, and that stuff, it's weird. It's like a glob of silver, but it doesn't like get absorbed easily or anything like that, so it's pretty bad. But they use it as a chemical caution. If you don't know what that means, it's basically like a sedation or medicine, but for unnecessary use. So they just gave it to people like it was candy to kind of like shut them up, calm them down, put them in the corner.
Well, it's funny because you know what a consequence of mercury is?
Death.
No, like hallucinations and shit.
So use it for
So
history.
you're gonna be making people more like, if they weren't crazy before, they're probably crazy now. Congrats.
If you're unaware, mercury is actually used in like fire extinguishers and stuff to put out fires.
Oh, hell no.
So yeah, that just puts it there. So the same flame retardant thing is also used to drug you and be highly poisonous. So I can't
that makes me so concerned for every like movie I've seen where people get sprayed down with fire extinguishers.
We all know that's whipped cream and dry ice.
Well, yeah, but like you got to figure out the people who that's actually happened to. They're just they didn't know that they got a mercury bath.
I think,
surprise.
woo! Another thing I always felt bad is a lot of people who were put into these hospitals that a lot of times were forgotten by families. Like once they put them in there, they kind of just lost all contact and were basically abandoned. So a lot of these patients, not only maybe from the practices there, but some naturally just died, and all these people were buried in these hospital grounds because nobody would come back to claim.
Yeah, and a lot of them are cremated too.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look online some of the like more notorious places, and it's sad. Like, it's like hundreds and thousands of people, and you're like, oh my god.
I mean,
like,
okay, there is another component to this that I wanted to bring up because, you know, speaking of unrecorded deaths, women who are sent to these places, sometimes, well, not even sometimes, a lot of the times, if they weren't sent to a freaking convent, they were sent to an asylum or a sanitarium, is when they got pregnant out of wedlock. And let's just say I would probably estimate 90% of these women did not make it out alive.
Yeah, and their kids were either probably adopted or family members took them. Or
yeah, and even if they did survive, their kids were definitely taken away from them. If not killed, you know, they were probably given away. So,
I mean, I'm sure, and I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they would probably test the babies to make sure that there was nothing wrong with them, like mentally or something. I'm sure that
I think as much as they could,
like they would know. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just think it's sad because you got to think of those numbers because that was just something that was just not reported.
Yeah, and it's sad, and I wonder how many people are still around from like kids that were born of patients in those hospitals. It's kind of wild, actually.
Now, are there like, I know we have mental health facilities now, but we don't really have like asylums anymore, correct?
They reworded them and call them psychiatric hospitals. So
yes,
they're still kind of the same thing, but they've obviously updated how the treatment and care is supposed to go. But sadly, to this day, there's a lot of people who are still abused and whatnot in that system by the staff. You know, it's still common. Just kind of like senior citizen homes. Some are not that friendly.
And I think now, like, we live in a day and age where mental health is so
crucial.
Well, and so studied, you know, where everybody's way more aware of it. And I don't think that we're putting women away just for being moody. Yes. I would hope. I hope you have more of a reason to bring that to the table.
Well, what got me, though, I will say, is how tuberculosis was so big that's what originally started, especially a lot of the sanitariums and whatnot in the United States, was just because of the overrun of tuberculosis, though. And that started in the 1800s, like early 1800s.
I mean, you figure, like, Waverly Sanitarium in Kentucky. That was primarily what that hospital was used for.
But the thing is, I mean, I don't know how long it took to get a cure for tuberculosis, because I know when you're born, you know, if you're a vaccinated person, I don't know, like even as a kid, I had the TB vaccination, you know, to try to help prevent it. But it was quite common back then, and it's actually quite shocking, but
it was a big killer.
Yes, and I know people may hate me, but I believe it probably killed more people than the coronavirus. I'm not 100%. Don't push me on that, but...
Well, arguably, like, a lot of illnesses have killed people more than corona, but I think it's just this is the most, like, prevalent thing that we've seen in a long time, but this is... Let me just break this down for people right now. This is not an unusual event. We have pandemics. They happen.
They come and go. Everyone, you know, sadly, yes, people do die, but people overcome it. And it's just being smart in how we do it. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
In the name of the holy catnip. Meow.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about anyone in particular? A lady or anything?
Okay, well, I do have one person I can bring up who was started in an asylum, which I'm like, the nerve. I made Elisa go through this already with me. So, if you know anything about the Wineville chicken coop murders, if you don't, look into it. It's interesting. Murderish did a very good... Murderish is a podcast you can find on Spotify. Did a very good video about the Wineville chicken coop murders. That guy was sick. He needs help. But this isn't about him. What it is about is Christine Collins and her son Walter Collins, who was thought to be a victim of the Wineville chicken coop murders. Sadly, they couldn't ever link him there completely, other than on the testimony of Northcott's forced accomplice Sanford. I stand Sanford, so if you ever want to know about the chicken coop murders, I would gladly get on here and tell you guys about them, because they're just so fascinating. But in the way that they're fascinating, that in how the crime was done and the time era it was done, and the fact that they were foreigners pulling this off in America was also very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because the thing that gets them caught is immigration, which, okay.
Of all things.
Yeah. But Christine Collins, her son Walter Collins went missing, sadly. And other than being told to wait for 24 hours before she could consider him missing, the police, after she did file the report, were like, oh, he probably just ran away. It's fine. She's like, wait. Look for my son, please. So beyond that, she really couldn't do anything other than just kind of hope that her son would return. She continued to look for him, and then eventually the police took it seriously. However, they did bring back a boy who claimed to be Walter Collins. He was not Walter Collins. And they handed this kid over to Christine. We're like, hey, look, your son's back. And she's like, this isn't my kid. And they gaslit this poor woman so much that she, for a hot second, thought, well, maybe it is my son. And then she was like, no, it's not. Because he had some characteristics that were very distinct. His dental records didn't match.
Which...
He wasn't the same height. There was just things about this kid that's like impossible. But the police were like, oh, well, he's traumatized. Maybe he shrunk. Like, they were literally telling her this. And I'm like, no, it's not how this works.
Just like overnight, all of a sudden, whole new person.
And then the dental records one caught me though, because they were like, well, maybe whoever took him, changed his teeth so he wouldn't be traced.
What?
Like, y'all are bold. That's all I'm saying. But no, this kid turns out later to be a completely other kid, and he just didn't like his stepmom. That's why he ran away. But Christine Collins was thrown into an asylum because she kept telling the LAPD, and even publicly came out and outed them, saying like, this isn't my kid, bring back my kid, like, find my son, like, what is your problem? Like, I'm telling you, this isn't my kid.
I mean, she's arguing with it. You'd think a mother would know her own child, and they're just like, nah, we know it's your kid. We got this. And that's, I mean, I would know what to do. Like, it's okay.
I mean, and this was in the 1920s, so, or, you know, late 1920s, early 1930s. So we're not so far back, like, you know, like, oh, she's obviously just a delusional woman.
I want you to think of this when that happened. Remember, Betty White was born in 1922.
Which, oh my gosh, Betty, do you remember this?
Betty, we got questions.
Do you remember this shit, Betty?
I would shit a brick if I
Which, by the way, if 2020 takes Betty White, I quit. But
suicide fact. No, I'm just kidding.
Betty White's got to make it to 2021. 2020 is officially the worst year in American history. But so, you know, Christine got thrown into this asylum, and they basically put her under this code of, like, she's obviously delusional. And it was basically just a code that they used to say that this person was bothering the police, essentially.
That's fucked up.
And they wouldn't let her out unless she confessed that the kid that they brought her was her son. And she flat out refused. She was a boss-ass bitch. Hell yeah, Christine. I like you.
I mean,
they eventually let her out, though. But
I just can't believe they threw her in there.
They let her out after that kid confessed that he wasn't Walter.
So, did they put the kid... Okay, so was the kid paid to act like the son?
There's speculation about that, actually. Some people think that he may have been bribed a little by the cops. But also, he admitted that, you know, when he was like, well, how did you answer so many questions about Walter? He was like, oh, I would just wait for the police to tell me stuff. And then, you know, I would, you know, repeat it back or give them an answer that I thought they wanted. So this kid, like, conned everybody. He was like a mastermind.
They should have threw his ass in there. Good God.
Yeah, no, it's not his fault. He's a male child. He did nothing wrong. He doesn't have a vagina, Elisa.
He's Jesus.
Clearly, that is the illness.
That's the biggest problem. You have a vagina. Yes.
Man, poor Christine, though, she never stopped looking for her son, even after, you know, Sanford and Northcott admitted to killing him. Like I said, they couldn't ever really find evidence. I mean, once again, this is the 1930s, that he was at the farm. But Sanford seems pretty certain, though, that is indeed Walter Collins that was killed. He was one of the people, or one of the children killed there at Wineville.
Wow.
So I'm inclined to believe him, but I do understand why Christine wouldn't give up trying to find her son, not having any part of him to bury.
Yeah, I mean, your mother, that's your son, and you know, you want to complete the whole process. You know, you want to know for sure that you could lay him to rest, reassuring yourself that everything's going to be okay. Even though
I just hope that no matter what, like, I hope she was reunited with him, and I hope, you know, that it's just sad because but the fact that she was thrown into a loony bin just because she had the nerve to tell the LAPD
that ain't my kid.
He has different teeth. I mean, I love their excuses, like, well, he shrunk. There's actually a pretty good movie. It's not entirely accurate to history, but it's close enough. It's called The Changeling. It's an older movie, I would say. Angelina Jolie plays Christine Collins. It's a very good movie. I think I should go watch it. I wish they would have went more into, like, the Wineville stuff, because not that I'm saying Northcott, like, needs to be studied, but I think he's like a serial killer that was really understudied, I would argue, because not only was he a pedophile, but he was, you know, homosexual.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of weird aspects to his killing that I think we should definitely look at. But
yes.
I feel bad too because, like, I mentioned the name Sanford. That was his nephew, and he sexually abused and tormented this poor kid.
Aww.
Yeah, and poor Sanford went on to live an okay life, but towards the end of his life, he really, you know,
Just
his
snapped.
his son said that, like, this is gonna divulge into the chicken coop murders, but it's relevant. Sanford, towards the end of his life, he told his adopted sons, because he decided not to have any children because he was so terrified to have kids, thinking that he would pass on like a crazy gene, which that is just so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, he ended up adopting 2 boys, and his towards the end of his life, his son, told me, like, Dad, I love you. And he looked at his son and he was like, why would you? Because he was still so racked with guilt over what he had done, in his youth, even though he was forced to do so. By the way, Sanford was abused. Like, I stand Sanford. He's the reason why his shitty uncle even got caught, really. So
Yeah, that's sad though. That's sad. Yeah, we'll have to
the
definitely
minute
dive
he
into
was
that.
the minute he was in police custody, Sanford sang like a canary. I was like,
He's like, oh, no,
you go, boy. But yeah, so all that was to say that people, I wonder how many people like Christine Collins were just flung into asylums and never let out. And it also scares me to know that the police were the ones that put her in there. Like, how many other people did that happen to?
Yeah, it could be numerous people,
They didn't let her out, though. Or let them out, I bet.
They're still locked away. Okay, so I found a lady that she went undercover into an asylum. Okay, so her name is Nellie Bly. She was the one that exposed how bad and the asylums were in New York. But this was back in 1887.
Oh, the woman nobody listened to. Got it.
Yes. I would say, she was brave. She was 23 years old, and she was put in with
give
people.
Give it up for these 23-year-olds, man. Rosemary.
And I mean, female like detective lights were not really heard of as much back then, because again, we didn't know how to do anything.
No, our vaginas were our illness, Elisa.
That's where it all started.
I mean, they kind of still are. Did you know? We're just women.
Of course.
All our problems are because we're not being fucked enough, or we fuck too much, or we bleed.
Laziness.
Or we want to learn way too much about Jesus.
Well, I'll give her credit though. She was put in with some like psychotic people, violent, whatever. Now a little thing is that she worked for the Pittsburgh Dispatch for a few years, but she got an assignment assigned by Joseph Pulitzer, which is the guy who they named the Pulitzer Prize after. So this was later in his life, but he had her go undercover, but he wasn't gonna help her getting in. She had to figure out her own way in and her own way out. Okay, so to start off, she checked herself into a working class boarding house, and she basically was acting crazy and stuff, so she'd frighten everybody, so they'd kick her out and put her in there. So she just...
Sorry, what? Okay, phase 1.
Phase 1. Act like a fucking nut job, get my ass
How do
kicked
you
out.
get the job and then just start going off the wall?
See, I don't know, I guess you act kind of casual at first, and then you just, like, go ape shit.
In the interview, you are calm and as cool as a cucumber. Like, yes, I do have references. Here you go. And then, like, the second you're in, like, day 1.
I got my fucking brush! You just go nuts.
I imagine she just becomes like the ending of Fatal Attraction instantly. I will not be ignored.
I mean, I'll give her credit. She was smart. She knew she had to scare the shit out of everyone else so bad that they would kick her out and put her in there. So I was like, that's fucking genius, okay? Now...
No, what if that didn't work, though? Like, that's funny.
See,
what if they were just like, yeah, you're kind of fired? Can you leave?
You're like, you gotta go.
Yeah, what if they weren't shitty people? Was she just counting on the fact that they were all shitty?
I guess back then it was easy to kind of manipulate people into thinking something because everyone was very,
I would like to think that she, like, this is purely my speculation. I would like to think that she like egged him, like, what are you gonna do? Throw me in the psycho bin.
Come at
She
me.
like kept dropping hints. She kept throwing pamphlets down.
Do you imagine she has like her hair up in like a messy bun, her eyeliner's all smeared, she's ready to go.
I imagine she's like throwing pamphlets, Sunny Springs. Like,
Sign me up.
do you think she started with her favorites and worked her way down?
Probably. So I guess within like her first like night or whatever, she said that nearly all night long she listened to women cry about being cold and begged to God to let them die. Another one kept yelling murder, and then the frequent intervals of people yelling police. And then she said others until my flesh felt creepy. So
I'm sorry. I want to be with a group yelling police.
Police! Like in the middle of the night, nothing going on. You're just yelling for the fucking police.
But also, like...
Go to bed, Betty.
Okay, there's another component to this story, though. So when she's in, did she stop acting crazy?
No, she kind of like let it on, like to
okay, good. I was going to say that was
keep
like, really
in character. She just like all of a sudden she's like, no, I'm good. No,
she's like, she tried to get a job at the hospital. Here are my references.
I just got fired recently.
Please ignore my last. Like they don't know.
So her thing is she used the name Nellie Brown to get her in. She pretended she was from Cuba and ranted that she was searching for missing trunks.
Wait a minute. How are you going to have the name Nellie Brown? How are you going to have the name Nellie Brown and be from Cuba?
But like her whole thing was she ranted about searching for missing trunks. Like, why?
Wait,
Nothing.
my trunks.
It's something crazy, I guess.
Hey, Nellie, what are we looking at here? What are we doing?
It said her ruse worked and the police were called and she had a hearing in New York City court. Now this is kind of a little more how she was ending up from the boarding house, though. Where a judge ordered her to Blackwell's Island, which they renamed, I think, Roosevelt Island now is what it's called. Which was like kind of like a poorhouse, but they also dealt with like smallpox, and the prison and the insane were all in one hospital.
It seems like a mixed bag.
I don't know. She's a crazy longer.
Did you imagine? Think of it this way: like you're going into a business, and they're like, "Yeah, we sell tires, bracelets, other car things sometimes,
bread, condoms,
yeah,
just a little everything."
And you're just like, "What?"
It was like the Walmart of asylums. A little bit of everything.
Just like, okay, well.
It said the horrid condition of the food in the mess hall was her first dose of deprivation. The tea tasted as if it had been made of copper, which I can only imagine. Imagine like just drinking a cup of water with pennies in it. Ugh. It's gross. Ugh. I wouldn't do that anyways.
But also, how do you even accomplish that taste?
Yeah, I would probably just die of starvation at that point.
It's like, you know what? I'll just like take well, not a water, juice.
Yeah. You got any alcohol? It said bread was spread with rancid butter.
Thanks.
Can I have some more, please?
I would have been out. Let me tell you.
I would have just gave up and be like, you guys, I'm faking it. I'm gonna go. Just deuces.
This was a fucked up social experiment.
What is this shit? I'd be throwing it.
And then at that point, they really would think you're crazy.
Then you wouldn't get out.
Oh my god.
It says she got a plain piece and it was hard with like a dirty black color. She goes, I found a spider in my slice, so I did not eat it. So there's spiders cooked into the bread.
Okay, so let's break it down.
It wasn't even the right color.
We got copper tea. We got
bread spread with rancid butter.
We got rancid butter bread.
Which had a dirty black color and had a spider inside of it.
Oh my god.
It says the oatmeal and molasses served at the meal was wretched. The next day she was served soup with one cold boiled potato and a chunk of beef. Can you imagine that?
I don't think that's soup. I think that's just very shittily done pot roast.
Which on investigation proved to be slightly spoiled. So they gave her spoiled beef in her soup.
What is with this asylum?
That's some shit. Kudos. That was like all in her like first 2 days.
The thing is, it's like, oh, you know what? Better get all the spoiled food in here. Let's go.
It says, to add to the torment, Bly wrote, the building was freezing. The drought went whizzing through the hall, and the patients looked blue with cold. So basically, they had no heating. They didn't care. It was just really, really bad conditions. It says, within her first few days, she was forced to take an ice bath. Again, that's the whole water technique.
What did she do to do that?
Do that, and I don't know. And it says,
consider that she acted, she crazied her way in. I just want to know what she did.
And then when they would also get cleaned up, they also gave him an ice cold bath with dirty water to take a clean bath in, and she would share two.
Just out of spite, like.
Well, when they were bathing the patients, so since she could
they would just do it one right after the other.
Well, I mean, no, but I think she also mentioned that she had to do like take a shower or like take a bath, but the water was dirty and it's ice cold. They don't even give them hot water. And then she got two really coarse towels that you had to share amongst 45 other people. Can you imagine what could be on that towel? Between 45 people.
And then they would have like disease outbreaks. Be like, how did this happen?
She said, my teeth chattered and my limbs were goose-fleshed and blue with cold. Suddenly, I got one after the other, 3 buckets of water over my head, ice-cold water too, into my eyes, my ears, my nose, and my mouth. I think I experienced a sensation of drowning person as they dragged me, gasping, shivering, and quaking from the tub. For once, I looked insane. Imagine going through that.
Wait, for once I looked insane. Nellie, you crazied your way in here.
Well, yeah, but I mean, she was pretty calm, but they were just basically like waterboarding her into like trying to bathe in this dirty ass water, and they just fucking drag you out of it when you could have got up yourself. They dragged her out of it, you know, and of course,
I'm gonna put it this way. This is the first time I looked insane because she was cussing like a bitch, because I would have.
Oh, I would have went out swinging.
Like, come on, touch me, I swear. I dare you.
It said, Bly made a point of talking to as many women as she could, among these sane ones. So there were some normal people, so she talked to them. She found that many were immigrants who didn't understand English and seemed to have been mistakenly committed to the island. So just because they couldn't understand them, they just fucking threw them in there. These poor ladies.
Speaking that Babel language. Toss them in.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I do feel bad for those people because, like, they were like, no, I'm just, you know, trying to find my people.
Okay, but listen, I gotta have a heart-to-heart with Nellie. You can't have the name Nellie Brown and be from Cuba.
I know, it's such a bad decision.
This was a bad backstory, Nellie.
Looking for missing trunks. It said others were just poor and thought they were going to the poorhouse, and not an insane asylum, she wrote. So they were promised one thing, but they shoved them into the asylum instead.
Oh, you know what that probably means for me? The paperwork got switched, and so there's some crazy person that's working at the poorhouse.
Scrubbing toilets with, like, Tourette's. Let's see. It says all related horrible stories of neglect and heartless cruelty. So everyone had like a really bad experience and why they were in there, and they were treated so poorly. And I couldn't imagine being in there and going through any of that. Like, I would, once I got out, I would light that place on fire. Just get all the patients out and just light that shit. Burn it down, bitch. That's all I'm saying.
I'd even make the gamble that not even like 10% of the people in there are crazy. So
probably. It said exhausted and starving, and she got out in 10 days after her entry into the asylum. So some lawyers of New York arranged her release. You know, even though she went through and suffered and everything, she wrote about it in Pulitzer's. I believe he had a newspaper or something of that sort that she wrote the story for when he assigned it to her. And it kind of made New York take a huge look at how people were being treated and how people were ending up there and why it was costing them so much money, because they were just taking like literally immigrants that were coming off the boats, probably from Ellis Island,
and then
throwing them in
costing
there.
so much money, and you're feeding them spoiled food.
Barely a piece of meat, a fucking boiled potato, and like...
And y'all don't have enough towels? What?
2 towels amongst 45 people. Can you imagine? That'd be like saying you have 2 towels in your whole family, and eventually you'll get your turn to use it.
It's fine.
I'd rather run around buck naked and air dry.
That's going to be the other tagline of this podcast. It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, it'll be okay. I just couldn't imagine. Ooh. No, I get too germophobic to...
I'm just going to say, though, kudos to her for lasting 10 days. I would have made it past day 1, but...
Yeah, after, one night, I would have been like, fuck this shit.
I'm glad that she had it, preemptively planned. Okay, if I don't emerge after, day 3...
And I think
y'all might want to start getting me out of here.
Even though Pulitzer, wanted her to do it, and he was like, okay, but you gotta figure out your own way, and I think while she was in there, I think he kind of came up maybe with a plan with her to get her out so she wouldn't be, subjected to any more harsh,
Well, I mean,
treatments.
And I understand why he wouldn't want to help her get in, because if it traces back to him, it's not
if it goes bad or something.
Yeah, it's not a great look.
And I think part of it is I wonder if they would even accept her if he'd had her go in, because he was known to do stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think it had to be so undercover that he was like, listen, don't say my name. You don't even know me.
I'm not your daddy. Don't call me.
That's crazy, though.
But yeah, I thought that was so cool, and it was really interesting, especially for that era, the late 1800s to be doing that. But damn, homegirl got some balls.
I'm sorry. Okay, so the reason why I went thanks to the bread is for a minute I was so immersed. I was imagining somebody spreading some rancid butter on bread and throwing it in front of me.
I mean,
and that no shit would have been my reaction.
I'm like, thanks. I feel like I'm gonna draw what I imagine that bread looks like, and I'm gonna just plug it into the video.
Oh my god, I will draw that and be like, my face looking at it would be enough.
Thanks. I mean, it's so bad, and I would not eat that. I wouldn't drink that shitty tea copper water or whatever the fuck they were giving him.
And you know what's sad about all this is that nothing, despite what she did and how the fight that she started and
didn't make it dent.
Shit. Yeah, no, it still didn't matter because, like I said, we're gonna cover even probably worse treatment of other patients.
Yeah.
When we get to the disabled, because the disabled are a whole other ballgame when it comes to these places. Especially the non-vocal ones. So people who couldn't talk.
Yeah. There's so many people who end up there with... I felt bad for those who couldn't speak for themselves or couldn't talk at all, maybe deaf or,
As somebody who's had somebody who's been disabled in their life and was nonverbal, that is a very scary fucking thing to me, because, you know, if something happened to my brother at school or whatever, we would have never known, because he can't express to us that something's happened to him.
Yeah, I mean, if we found out that was happening, I'd probably be in prison. Just gonna say.
Yeah, heads would have literally had to roll.
But it's
I would have bought a guillotine. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my god.
What do you want this for? No reason.
None of your damn business.
Then I would have been put in this asylum with rancid bread.
I mean, I don't know. It was a sad time, and it's so crazy, and it's so stupid, the reasons you got in there, but it's one of those, like, I can't wait to go kind of further into it, because I'm afraid what we're going to dig up, but I think it'll be kind of mind-blowing. And
yeah, no kidding.
I don't know.
Because what do we learn about, what's the takeaway from history? Everything sucked.
Yes.
That's why, like, all you people out here who are like, we need to, you know, oh, look at the good old days. Where, bitch? Where?
But people need to remember there's a reason why we leave things up for history, so we don't fucking repeat it.
Yes, this is why you learn your history. Learn it.
Not just Google it. Go find a book.
Yeah, and even if you do goo, you better fall down that rabbit hole so hard.
I want you to end up on the black web.
Just don't do what I do, because, like, sometimes I look up, like, art pieces, and then there'll be, like, some alien conspiracy theory attached to them, and before I know it, I'm scared of the government for some reason.
It's like TikTok. You look for one thing and you end up somewhere else, and I ended up in the prison TikTok. I was like,
There's
what?
prison TikTok?
Oh my god, yes. You got to look it up.
Oh, that's exciting.
I mean, that's all I have for on this episode. I don't know about you.
I was mostly here for commentary.
But yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to comment. But
Tell us about your uterine fury.
Yes, I want to hear about your uterine fury,
including you dudes out there.
And how lazy are you that you ended up in there?
What reason would you have been thrown in for an asylum for?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, like, what reason do you think would have got you tossed into an asylum?
Definitely the masturbation for 30 years. Definitely. And the asthma. I would have been fucked. I want to know how that connotated you to being crazy. Asthma.
I mean...
I can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
Bitch.
I just want to go for menstrual deranged. That's going to be mine in superstition.
Menstrual deranged. You want your PMS to land you in there?
Yes. But thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. And please come back for the next one, because I don't know what's going to come next, but we'll figure it the fuck out.
I don't know. Are we going to do our next parts of the Asylum series back to back, or do we need a break before we go into the...
No, I think we can continue. We can try.
Yeah, we can do it.
All
Asylums Part 2. Coming your way.
Coming at ya. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.